but joining us right now from Cleveland Browns camp. We always want to check in with him because we're delighted to have him on this program. Also, his information is top-notch, and then when he's on a summer tour, got to check on how raging the tan is. Ladies and gentlemen, the George Hamilton of National Football League media, Albert Breer. Good to see you, sir.
Not bad. I'm doing okay. I wouldn't say it's my best, but I think it's coming along.
Okay. Are we SPFing? Yeah. Like, walk me through that information. Are we SPFing? Are we?
No, I'm good in the sun. I did get a couple rainy days over the course of camp, some cloudy days. That slowed things down a little bit, but I'm doing okay.
Okay. I appreciate you zooming in from the middle of what number camp are you on your training camp tour for Sports Illustrated?
So this is number 7. So and if I'm talking in hushed tones, it's because I'm in the lobby because I had to jerry-rig this a little bit.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I actually really enjoy this part of the trip every year where I'm driving from place to place. So I'm at the tail end of that. I went to Detroit first, then flew to Indianapolis, and then drove Vikings, Packers, Bears, Colts, Bengals, Browns today, Bills tomorrow, and then I'll go out west.
Okay, man. All right. I'm writing them all down so I can know what to hit. Let's talk about where you are first, the Browns. What's the scoop with the quarterback room right now, Albert?
I mean, it sounds like it's still relatively wide open, and part of that is they haven't really gotten a great look at Joe Flacco yet. And that's because essentially, and I think I've used this term with you before, he essentially got a first-round bye through the beginning of the competition. They felt like they knew what he could do, and they had a good idea of what he would look like within the offense. And so rather than wasting the reps in the spring, they used the reps they would give him to get a look at Kenny Pickett and Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. And so now they're going to another phase of the competition. They've been doing 2-spot drills until now, which means they've got 2 practice fields going at once to try to get the best look they can at the quarterbacks. Now they're going into this phase where it's going to normalize a little bit because they're in pads. They can't do that quite as much because it'd be too much on the other players. I'd say as of right now, Kenny Pickett's going to be out for about a week with the hamstring injury. Flacco's doing well. I think those two are ahead. I think Dylan Gabriel is probably closer to those two, and Shedeur still has a ways to go. But I think based on his starting point, Shedeur's actually made a lot of progress. He was just pretty far behind when he first showed up here.
Wow, how so? What's the details on being far behind? Albert?
It's the stuff you heard before the draft, Rich. And look, like I know people didn't like hearing it in March and April, but it was true. Like that there were a lot of teams that were surprised how far behind he was just from a football know-how standpoint, and that he had a long way to go in that department. And that held true when the Browns got him here. Not all his fault. Like different college offenses are run different ways, and what they were doing at Colorado evidently didn't translate to what Cleveland's doing. So he had the steepest learning curve by far of the 4 quarterbacks. Obviously, Pickett and Flacco are rookies, and then Gabriel, it was a 6-year college guy that started games at 3 different schools. So I think it would be to be expected that he would be behind the other 3 anyway. But as I think me and a lot of other people had heard before the draft, he did have a ways to go in assimilating to the pros as a quarterback in general.
But as we're sitting here on the final Monday of July, sounds like it's still an open competition that anybody can win. Literally, anybody can win.
I think it's funny. Somebody said to me earlier today, they're being evaluated on everything, and they're trying to use every little bit of information they can get. And it's not just how they play in the field. It's how their teammates react to them. It's how they are in the meeting rooms. And so absolutely everything's being evaluated now. They've gotten a lot of reps for the quarterbacks in the spring that they have to go on. So I think ideally what they would like to do is they've got joint practices the next 2 weeks. I think it's the Panthers next week and then the Eagles after that. And so I think after those 2 sets of joint practices, they'd like to have a decision. They could certainly narrow it down. It does feel to me like it is to some degree weighted at this point, where Flacco and Pickett were in the thick of it. Gabriel was getting sparingly getting some first team reps, and Shedeur wasn't working with the first team at all. I don't know if that'll change, with Pickett out. My anticipation is most of the first team work will go today to Flacco and Gabriel. And again, like we'll see what happens over the next 3 weeks. But my guess would be one of the veterans winds up starting the opener.
All right, Albert Breer, you mentioned Indianapolis as a stop on your tour so far for Sports Illustrated. MMQB's Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's go there next because that's another competition at the quarterback spot. Anthony Richardson coming in healthy is an interesting twist, right? Or he's not, still working on it? What'd you glean there when you stopped by there?
I would say you always have to be careful about that term when you're talking about a quarterback's shoulder that hasn't been surgically repaired, or even if it has been, he had it done before, of course, but having the soreness is a red flag. So I think from what I understand, he's been good through the first week of camp, but you never know, like that soreness can resurface. I think Daniel Jones is the lead dog in that competition. That's just based on, conversation I've had and putting pieces together. The interesting thing talking to Shane Steichen about this, a couple of days ago was he kind of impressed how important it was going to be that the person who is the quarterback winds up being very consistent and knows how to run the operation. And I think it's sort of reflective of what they feel like is a pretty decent roster. Like they don't need the quarterback to come in and save them. Like they feel like they can have a pretty good offense if the quarterback can just operate the offense the way they intend for the quarterback to operate the offense. And this was an amazing stat. And it caused me to kind of like look at the Colts a little bit differently. So like last year they had 29 giveaways, which was, I believe, third to last in the NFL, third worst in the NFL. And they had the 29th ranked total defense. So I think a lot of the mindset is there. If we can play more efficiently and cleaner on offense, and then Lou Anarumo can come in and fix the defense. I mean, they won 8 games doing that last year, 8 games under those conditions last year. So again, like I think a lot of it for them offensively is who's going to get us into a position where we can play much cleaner football than we did a year ago, which again is interesting when you're talking about 2 guys that were picked in the top 10 when they were drafted.
Right, and sometimes not known for their ball security, right?
Yep.
And patience level is really the term in Indianapolis that I'm intrigued by. Patience level with Anthony Richardson and Chris Ballard showing off his guns like this while he was talking, which I would too. And him saying we got to be more patient with the kid, right? Like we're not just going to turn aside from him, although they do have Daniel Jones in-house. But here's where I'm winding up. It's really the patience level sometimes with teams from ownership. And I'm just wondering what you were able to glean on the management style of Carly Irsay Gordon, the eldest daughter of the now late Jim Irsay, who's now in charge there. And the sense of how that might bring to bear decision-making roster-wise and quarterback-wise, Albert.
Well, I mean, like we can start here like that. She has been in the building. So like she was really groomed by her dad and other people in the building to eventually be in this role. Nobody knew it was going to happen now, of course, but she's been groomed to be in this role. And I think anytime there's that sort of ownership transition, there's going to be some unknown. And I can remember, when Paul Allen died, because Paul Allen wasn't around a lot, as you know,
right.
The Seahawks building a lot. Jody Allen became the owner, his sister. And even though she didn't really do much that would affect the football people early on, there was this level of discomfort because there was the unknown, because you don't know how different it's going to be.
Right.
Because look, at the time, she didn't hire John Schneider. She didn't hire Pete Carroll. She didn't draft Russell Wilson. And I think it's the same sort of thing here. There are very few coaches that make it through 3 years without making the playoffs and see a 4th year. And that's where Shane Steichen is right now. Chris Ballard's been there. This will be his 9th season. So, I think because you have that dynamic added to the fact that there's somebody else making the decision, there is like a certain level of, well, we don't know what's going to happen at the end of the year. At the same time, they do know her, so I do think that gives you at least a little bit of a feeling of, all right, like, this probably isn't going to look too different. But I don't know that I would say that anybody is 100% safe there. Like, I think you have to let the season play out. And at the end of that, we probably figure out a little bit more about where Carly's at as an owner.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Couple quarterbacks from last year's draft class with new leases. You visited the Vikings. So J.J. McCarthy, this is his gig, and he's hooked up to Kevin O'Connell, reigning coach of the year, who's a quarterback whisperer. What's this going to look like? Because it's essentially like that team won 14 games last year with Sam Darnold. They are a Super Bowl contender if J.J. McCarthy can show up and be the guy in his first full year coming off of injury, in his first full year as starter. What are you gleaning there, Albert?
So they're loaded. I think JJ has really good perspective on this. And I think a big part of it is going to be like what they're asking him to do, right? You know how good that situation is. We don't need to go through all the players they have, the scheme they have, now the history that Kevin O'Connell has through 3 years, right? And, you know, it was interesting having this conversation with Kevin and some other people there about what JJ lost last year, right? Like last year was really tough on him. He's a super competitive kid, as you know. He lost the weight. You know, I think he got a little down and had to fight through some stuff. And in losing all of the reps that he lost, like the on-field reps, right? Like they say, like one of the big things with him is that he has to learn to layer the ball better. Like at Michigan, a little too much on fastballs, like, you know, just over and over and over and over again, which showed his arm strength, but, you know, obviously every throw can't be that way. And so if he had been running the scout team last year, he would have gotten a lot of good reps throwing into tight windows, learning how to do that. So he lost all of that, right? So there was a lot lost when, you know, he got hurt last year and lost that development time, even if he wasn't going to start. And so I think maybe one of the most interesting things that I was able to glean from there is, you know, they tried to bring back Daniel Jones's insurance policy. They kicked the tires on bringing Sam Darnold back. Those guys felt like they had better opportunities to be the guy somewhere else, so they left. I think that Kevin O'Connell, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the offensive coaches now think that was a blessing in disguise because all of that time that JJ lost in the spring, or all the times JJ lost last year, he was able to make up for it in the spring. He took every first team rep in the spring. He's taking every first team rep in training camp. So it's allowed him to do these things over and over and over again and make up for all of that last time and develop his voice and become more of a leader and let the other players hear him. And so that's all good. But they don't need him to be Superman because of the team they have. And so we'll see what happens with Jordan Addison's suspension. You got Justin Jefferson there. Speedy Naylor's a really good young receiver playing for a contract. TJ Hawkinson. The line should be a lot better with Ryan Kelly and Will Fries and Donovan Jackson coming in. You got Aaron Jones behind you. It's a really, really, really good situation. So I think what Kevin's thing is going to be is take the layups. When we give you easy throws, take them. We're going to do stuff in the run game that's going to help you in the pass game. That marriage of run and pass, let that help you. We're going to give you stuff in the screen game. We're going to give you stuff in the quick game. It's going to be, I think, putting him in the best position to succeed. And I think anybody who's watched the Vikings the last few years, what they were able to do with Kirk Cousins, then what they were able to do with Sam Darnold, knows like Kevin's good at putting together a plan to get the most out of somebody, and I think he will do that with JJ too.
And an awesome matchup the first Monday night of the season, week 1. They're at the Bears, so it'll be Caleb Williams, if you will, 2.0, because I'm assuming you gleaned when you got to Bears camp that Ben Johnson has told him how to watch film, right? And given him an indication on that front, you know.
I think he probably gave him some instructions.
A little bit on that. And, you know, Kevin Byard talking about how Ben Johnson wants to build a dynasty here. And Ben saying, listen, we're putting a lot on Caleb's plate to see what he can handle. Well, what was your takeaway from Ben Johnson going there? Because it does appear to be in Bears fans' eyes, just add Ben, add an offensive-minded coach who's attached to the hip of Caleb Williams, and then watch him soar.
Yeah, I'd say 2 things. Number one, I think the basis for a good team is there. I really like what they did in the offensive line. The skill guys are there. I think matching Colston Loveland with Cole Kmet, I think that's a really good thing to do conceptually. You know, with Rome Odunze and DJ Moore, of course, on the outside. I think the defense with Dennis Allen there is going to be a lot better. I think Caleb's got a ways to go. It did not look good the day I was there. And, you know, when I talk to people there about why it looked that way, is they're trying to make Caleb drink through a fire hose. Developmentally, he had a long way to go coming out of USC. Then he had the really sideways rookie year. And you can see when you watch the difference in the speed of the operation when Case Keenum is in there, when Tyson Bagent is in there versus where it is with Caleb Williams. And so they're just trying to overload him with information. They're overloading him with defensive looks. They're overloading him with everything to try to speed up his process, to try speed up his learning. And the plan is from here then to start to narrow that down, right? So you're starting with this huge kind of menu of things that you're trying to do with him and seeing what he can handle and trying to speed him up. And then as they get closer to the season, they'll narrow it back down. So I think like, again, it just didn't look great the day I was there. I think there's a method to what Ben Johnson is doing. I would trust him with a quarterback, but you could see developmentally where it was almost like, I don't know if this is the right analogy, but like, you've got this, you got it's like you've got like this thoroughbred horse and you're breaking the horse, right? Like you're trying to get him to do exactly what you need him to do. And, I think that part of it is been a process with a lot of quarterbacks coming out of college offenses the way that they are right now. And it's just something that Caleb's going to kind of have to fight through. And I think, in the end, I think it'll work, but it didn't look good the day I was there.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Johnson did admit that, hey, he's playing slower than he can because we're throwing the kitchen sink at him. He basically said it, Yeah. So you saw it, is what you're saying.
And that's what they're trying to do. I mean, like, and again, like that can be hard. You know what I mean? That can be really hard.
Right.
And it's like, and that's why, like, I hate it, Rich, for these players. I can't stand it for these players when, like they put up a single clip on Twitter and say a guy's awful or a guy's going to be a superstar. I mean, in most cases, you have no idea if you're just looking at that clip, what the coaches are trying to accomplish, And so I think that part of it, like, I'm really interested to see where that goes. You know what I mean? Because I think there's this gathering of information they're doing and dispensing of information they're doing right now. And the confidence building part of it, I think, will come later, but their hope is that he'll build confidence through the amount of stuff he's able to handle.
All right. In the few minutes I have left with you, so you don't get arrested for loitering there in the Browns facility. And I appreciate the time.
The mortgage company's getting some good advertising.
They sure are. They sure are. They're pretty happy about that. Let's talk about the holdouts and what you can tell me. First things first, can you interpret this Stephen Jones comment when he was asked about the pay Micah chants that the Jones family was hearing from the stands, from the fans in Oxnard? Can you interpret this for me, please?
Did you hear the fans yelling "Pay Micah" yesterday? And what do you think when you hear that?
That doesn't change anything. I mean, we want to pay Micah too. He's got to want to be paid.
What does that mean? He's got to want to be paid in your mind, in your reporting, Albert?
I mean, I think so. To me, this goes back to last year. And one of the things the Cowboys have gotten a lot of criticism for is not going in early on these deals, right? Like, so they had to pay a price for doing CeeDee Lamb after 4 years instead of 3. They had to pay a price for waiting on Dak Prescott. And now they're going to have to pay a price for doing Micah Parsons now rather than having doing his contract after 3 years. That's reality, right? Like, it costs more now, could cost $45 million per year now, or maybe you'd be talking about 36 or 37 last year. I think what Stephen Jones is alluding to here is whether or not Micah Parsons was willing to do a deal last year. So I think that's sort of where it's at. And I think and I don't think they were unwilling to do a deal last year, but I think they were unwilling maybe to do a deal on the Cowboys' terms last year. So that's part of the history now. So when he asks for more money now, it's a part of, like, being an NFL player is I took an extra season of injury risk on. So, like, any discount you were going to get is out the window now, So I think this is kind of, this is Stephen alluding, I think, to the big picture of the last 2 off seasons and not where they are right now.
Okay. The OG of your alma mater's wide receiver class in Terry McLaurin showed up. He's in. Does that mean something's close? What can you tell me there with Washington and McLaurin?
Well, I think he doesn't want to pay the fines anymore.
Okay.
So that's part of it.
That's as simple. Okay.
$50,000 a day is not great. And I don't know. I honestly don't know if you're having much more of an effect by holding out than you would be by holding in. I think some players would argue a hold in is more painful for the team because, like, it's right in front of everybody's, like, face every day that he's not out there, So Yeah, I think they still have a ways to go on this. I just have a hard time imagining the conclusion won't be Terry McLaurin is a Washington Commander now and is a Washington Commander for the foreseeable future. Maybe, I mean, maybe there are some more bumps along the way. But I think really what this is a result, and it's sort of similar to Trey Hendrickson this way. It's a result of the market exploding at the position and the top end getting so far above where it was. And then how do you fill in the guys that maybe are a notch below? So, for instance, like, what Myles Garrett and TJ Watt get make it more difficult to slot in Trey Hendrickson because Hendrickson's not what those guys are, but how close is he, right? And now you have this gap between one and the other. And then I think, what ends up happening is guys like Max Crosby and Danielle Hunter do deals, and that helps color what you're going to pay Trey Hendrickson. And the same thing with Terry is like when Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb did that deal, they created this gap. And so where does he fit in? In that way, I think, one I know he's looked at is DK Metcalf. Like, I think he feels like he deserves to be paid what DK Metcalf was in Pittsburgh. And now, like, the Garrett Wilson deal sort of confirms that the DK Metcalf deal, that's just where the market is for the guys who might be slightly below the very top level. So I think this gets done. I think the question's probably going to be on the guarantee and how far out you guarantee him, but he's just too important to them, and he's too much of a part of what DQ and AP are building there. And to me, like, I'd even put it this way. You've been around him, Rich. Like, he's too symbolic of what they're trying to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
he's as good as they come. He's as good as they come in terms of a person, in terms of locker room, in terms of, hey, you ball out here, you get paid. He's crucial in Jaden Daniels' second year. So, and again, I know I'm over time with you right now. You want to quickly? You were leading yourself to Trey Hendrickson. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I think the Trey one, like, so this one, it sounded like last weekend they were closing in on maybe getting something done. And then on Monday, so that'd be a week ago today, the whole thing kind of blew up on them. So I don't think they're back to zero, but I think it does sort of indicate how volatile this thing has been and how up and down this thing has been. And to me, I think like one of the real issues is the Bengals' past precedents. And they broke those precedents to sign Joe Burrow 2 years ago. They broke those precedents to sign Jamar Chase earlier this year. And then they signed T. Higgins to a more conventional Bengals deal. So if you're the Bengals, which bucket do you put Trey Hendrickson in? Because he's older, you probably put him in the Higgins bucket, right? But do you think Trey Hendrickson wants to hear that after fighting for a contract for 3 off seasons? So I think as much of this as anything is figuring out how to bridge that gap, that divide, and what the contract looks like from a guarantees and structure standpoint. And then I think for the Bengals, honestly, I think it's like just finding a way to make it look like he won, because I do think part of it, there's a pride element to this too, for all players who go through these sorts of things. And he's gone through it again, 3 off seasons in a row. So I think finding a way to make sure that Trey Hendrickson looks like he got something out of this and that he won, I think could be a key to getting a deal done too, because I don't think they're that far off.
You're the man, Albert. Safe travels. Let me know when you're out here in LA, please. Okay.
Awesome. I will. Probably early next week. So we'll see you then.
Okay. Very good. This is good. Yeah. Hopefully we need to see the tan in person. Plus, I notice you always make it your social media avatar because we shoot you nicely here when you're in studio.
You guys have a good photographer for sure.
Thank you very much, Albert. Take care of yourself, brother.
See you, Albert.
Thanks,
ladies and gentlemen, everybody follow Albert Breer. His information on the MMQBs. Second to none. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.